Okay, so it is time for the new kind of fishing season where we aren't chasing mermaids, we're chasing the seamen of Aqua Force. With the release of the new set, Aqua Force is now added to the game. With that, there are 3 triple rares, 2 of which are very needed, and 1 is not as much. That is a little bit more expensive than the average deck. So this free to play is meant to get your feet wet, if you know what I mean. So the goal of the deck is to focus on dealing damage and not really worrying about their rear guards, because then we will be using our boss monster Hydra Drive Hurricane Dragon as a board wipe. His ability is that when he attacks the Vanguard, he gets plus 3k, so he's a 13k attacker. And then if you are in Limit Break, he also gets another 3k. And if it is the 4th attack of the turn, he can counterblast 2 on a hit, nuke your opponent's board. With this effect in mind, it has to be the 4th wave, which means it will be the last attack of our turn. This means that all of their interceptors will already be gone, so we will most likely just be wiping out their back row. But Counterblast 2 to retire up to 3 units is pretty good. There are going to be a lot of turns though where your opponent only does have 1 unit in the back, in which case you'll just hold back your Counterblast because it's not really worth it, because we are going to be needing that Counterblast to be activating our main win con in a way, which is Basil. His ability is that you can counterblast 1 during your main phase. That's important. He can then ignore intercepts if he attacks first. He then has the ability that if he is attacking the Vanguard, he gets plus 3k, and he switches places with a unit behind him. This is what allows for the multi-attacking and helping us get to our 4th wave. This means that in most cases, if we want to use Basil to get us to our 4th wave, and then use Hydro as our 4th wave to then nuke the board, we're going to need 3 counterblasts open. This is going to be kind of hard since we do not have access to any countercharging. As a backup boss monster, we are using Vasilis. He has the ability that when his attack hits, you get to filter a card in your hand. What I really like about him is that since he works on rearguard, you can place him behind a Basil, send Basil in, and then swing him in at an interceptor, and he still gets to activate his ability. So this lets you churn through your deck a little bit quicker. I'm then playing for Xenophone. Him being a 10k attack is nice because he can still take out interceptors. But if we don't need him to take out an interceptor, like let's say our opponent has a grade 3 in the front row and they are on cross ride, for example, he can still be the first attack on Vanguard. I'm then playing one of the Counterblast 1, get plus 3k. As soon as you get a triple rare, just feel free to add them in. He's more of here just to fill in the slot. The rest of the grade 2s, I am playing 2 Algos. I was originally playing the one guy who gets plus 3k on 3rd wave, making him a 12k attacker. His ability is that if he is the 4th wave and he hits, you get to draw a card. He also has the ability that if he is the 4th wave, you can counterblast 1, making him a 14k attacker, which means he will be able to hit over a cross ride unboosted. This does mean if you hit your opponent at all during the battle phase, he won't be hitting. Your opponent obviously would have gotten from 10, 11 to 15 or 16. So he's someone that you don't place behind a Basil. He is someone that you place off to a different row with a booster. The reason I decided to go with Algos, when I was looking at his ability originally, I was seeing that nobody was playing him in Maelstrom decks anymore. This is because Maelstrom also attacks on 4th wave, so him also wanting to be 4th wave makes it so that they cannot work on the same turn, so people were just cutting Algos. However, in this build, there's going to be a lot of attacks where you don't care if Hydro is going to be nuking the board. So that means you can use Hydro to take out an interceptor, and then Algos to help you draw into your deck more. I'm playing 4 of the 10k vanilla. This is so that he can take out any interceptor the opponent might have. I'm then playing 3 of each of the self-damagers. This is because we kind of have flexibility in the ending of our slots, so in this build, him getting the limit break isn't necessary. It's mainly just to allow him to hit for bigger numbers to help Hydro get that additional plus 3k. The grade 2 can get kind of awkward because if you have to place him behind a Basil, he's going to have a harder time taking out interceptors. But there are going to be turns anyway where you were probably just going to be swinging something into a big butt anyway just to progress your waves, so he doesn't really end up like negging you. I'm then playing 4 of the on 3rd wave, he gets plus 3k, so this means he is a 10k attacker on 3rd wave. Sometimes you have to like do some like kind of weird big brain plays where you will, let's say you have Basil attack, you have Splash Assault behind him, moving him up. You then swing with either your Hydro or your rear guard. This will then progress you to 2. He will then be your 3rd swing, taking out the last interceptor. And then your 4th wave, either being a Hydro or Algos, will then swing in at the Vanguard. I'm then playing 2 Anakin, 2 Lightsaber Penguin. Anakin's just really nice to have for the drawing. Besides Algos, the deck has no way of plussing, and we have no other use of our soul. I'm choosing to play Draco Kid as my starter. This is because, like I said, it's kind of the same thing with Anakin, that we need some way of plussing to allow us to continue our plays. Because as the opponent is taking out our rearguard, this is then lowering our chances of being able to get to our 4th wave. I will usually place Draco Kid behind Vanguard. This is so he doesn't mess up our waves at all. Also, when he is boosting Hydra, on normal attack, it is an 18k column, which does hit over perfect numbers over even a cross ride. And then if we are in limit break, Hydro is attacking for 21. This then hits over magic numbers over an 11k butt. I personally end up making a lot of errors on when to activate his ability. I'll have a lot of games where I just keep him back there because I'm like, oh, I need the booster for my Hydro. But then there's a lot of turns where it's like, I should have used him, so then I could have drawn a card, and then I could have progressed my board better on the next turn. I have a lot of trouble deciding on when to activate him, so hopefully as you're playing the deck, you'll have a better feel of that than I do. A big weakness of the deck is that there's going to be a lot of turns where you won't have interceptors in the front row. This is because Basil is moving to the back, which means you are sometimes going to be having either Splash Assault in the front row or a grade 3 in the front, which is obviously not going to be able to protect you. Having defense as a weakness, I really like playing 9 draws. This is so that we can draw into our pieces, such as Basil, or into our PGs. This being a budget build means that you can splash in crits with this deck, since our Vanguard is usually going to be our last swing. A little bit of luck with the crit will allow us to fill in the gap between this build and, like, let's say a Maelstrom build. I don't think you should be playing 9 crit because you still want to be able to plus a little bit, but I think playing like 3 to 5 crits is still something you can definitely try out. So some lines of play. For the love of everything holy, reading your cards tell you what the card does. Reading Basil tells you to activate his effect. It is not an auto on attack. So if you are monkey brain like me and forget to use Basil's ability before attacking, you just turned off your entire turn, because that means you have no way of getting to 4 wave, and you really need to be doing that every turn for the 2 damage and for the activating of abilities, which is going to be helping us progress the board either by controlling the opponent's back row or drawing cards. Just remember to use Basil's ability. Just always look at him if he's glowing. Be like, oh, I didn't activate his ability yet. Just don't be monkey brain like me, okay? Just be better. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of turns where you're just going to have to ram something at the Vanguard just to progress the wave, and this is totally fine. This means that your opponent probably didn't have 2 interceptors, which means we are still going to be able to deal 2 damage this turn, which is what we want to be doing anyway. Other budget options that I was looking at with this build, I was considering running 1 copy of Dorothea. This is so that Hydro, when he is not in limit break, would be able to hit over cross ride. I then decided against it because typically we're not going to be able to boost a lot of our units, so using her behind anything else is probably not going to work. And then we would really like to be playing stuff like Splash Assault, which is going to be able to attack by himself, and then units like Penguin and the Self-Damager. I still think you can maybe cut down on the Self-Damagers in this build and possibly splash in some like Dorothea, but I'd still rather know I can pressure the opponent with a limit break when they're not expecting it. It feels a little more powerful than the plus 4k that she gives. So Valeria is kind of like Algos, where he conflicts with our Vanguard trying to hit for the 4th wave. The reason I'm not playing her is because she does the same thing that Hydra is trying to do, which is control the opponent's back row. So there's not really a reason to play her, because there's not going to be really a turn where you're going to want to activate her ability over Hydros, and I'd rather play Algos, which is going to be able to draw us cards. Upgrades for the deck. I feel like I don't need to tell you that like Maelstrom is just a better Hydro. They both get the plus 3k on attack. Maelstrom is an 11k butt. He also gets 5k on 4th wave. He can draw you a card, and he can retire an opponent's back row for no cost. Doesn't use any CB. It doesn't even need to hit. Like, that's such a good ability. Like, Maelstrom is so good. He will be a ranked reward or a tournament reward depending on how our seasons go. So I don't really think you should worry about crafting him right now. If you have copies of him, obviously play him over Hydro. Don't play both because like they're not really needed. But definitely play him if you have him, but like don't worry to crafting him yet. In my opinion, if you love Maelstrom and need to be playing him the second, dude, it's your time. Navel Gazer is not good. He's playable. If you have him, you can definitely put him in the deck. What's really nice about him is that he doesn't need to be 4th wave. He's only 3rd wave, so that means you don't need to rely on Basil. However, he restands your units with no power gain. But in terms of just like progressing damage, he doesn't really help. So yeah, I definitely don't think you need to worry about like crafting him, but if you have copies of him, like, yeah, feel free to play him. I don't think that means you should take out your Hydras for him. Yeah, maybe take out like the hand filter in grade 3 if you really want, but I really like him because he can like work on rear guard. Yeah, that's up to you. Diamantes is obviously very good. He helps you get to your 4th wave. He has the exact same ability as Basil. He does hit 12k instead of 11k, which means he can hit MLB. If it was up to me, if I was telling you what to craft, I would say maybe go for Diamantes. Because, like I said, Navel Gazer isn't really played. And Maelstrom will eventually be a reward, so there's no reason to like waste your materials on that. While Diamantes just allows the deck to pressure a lot more. Now, when just kind of going up against the meta, just know that if you ever go up against a control deck, you're going to have a really hard time. With Basil going to the back row, this means that you will most likely be able to consistently go for 4th wave in most games. But going up against a clan like Narukami or Kagero, there's going to blow up your Basil. They're going to blow up your Draco Kid. And then your plays are just going to be slowly turned off over time. Typically what I do then in these controlled matchups is I'll play a little more aggressive in the early game, taking advantage of the fact that I still have that 5k booster. And I try not to put Basil out on the turns that I don't need him. But you will need the interceptor sometimes, so you will put him up front. And sometimes you just kind of need to play into their retiring because that uses up their resources. Yeah, so overall, my thoughts for the deck is that it's weird because I prefer to make these videos in a way of that you can either take this deck and then upgrade it once you start getting triple rares, or the deck kind of has its own mission, so you have this kind of cool little like side deck to play. Yes, like Hydra is really cool. He can like nuke your opponent's entire back row. You know, Counterblast 2, retire 3, really cool. Dude, it can technically retire 4 or 5 if your opponent has like grade 3s in the front, but like that means that you swung at his Vanguard 4 times, and you see what I mean? Like, it's mainly just going to be wiping out the back row. So since Hydro is basically just a worse Maelstrom, you'll technically just be taking him out every time you add a Maelstrom in. So you can't really like upgrade the deck. You're replacing the deck. See what I mean? I'm having trouble like selling you this deck if you're only going to be playing it for like 2 weeks. I do think, however, if you don't have all of your Maelstrom pieces, you might as well just ride the Hydro wave, you know? So you can either use your gems instead of using it on Maelstrom. You can spend it on making some Diamantes. Or hell, save it up for Glory. But wait, Glory also becomes like a weird like championship reward, right? Overall, I'm having a lot of fun playing around with Aqua Force. I've never really got to play around with it even in the TCG. I did play a little bit of it in standard with like the Navel Gazer little budget build. But the whole like multi-attacking like with Basil and stuff, it feels really fun. Like having a consistent way of dealing 2 damage to your opponent turn is like very good even in this budget build. I'm not going to lie, I've had a little bit of trouble like getting some wins with this deck. But it can definitely pull out some wins. I got a win against like the Endo deck the other day. That was really cool. Expect another fishing season deck, if you know what I mean, in the next couple days. Dude, I'm really excited about showing you guys that deck. Yeah. I never know how to end these. That's all I got.